Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. I hope you're having a great October. We're going to continue on our Halloween-themed journey by talking about a French mask company called César. Now, some people out there are saying, no, it's not pronounced that way. It's César, who knows what. I watched some French language videos, like French news presentations, where they were interviewing people at the company, and the French TV news people and the people at the company pronounced it César. So that's how I'm going to pronounce it, César. César is a classic mask manufacturer in the same league as Don Post or Distortions Unlimited or Be Something Studios or Topstone. It is one of those iconic mask makers, but a lot of people, in the US at least, are not as aware of César as they are of some of those other companies. And I'm in that boat too. Before doing some research for this episode, I was not very aware of César. I knew they existed, but I didn't have a lot of information about the history of the company. And let me put out a disclaimer. I'm not really a César collector. I just play one on YouTube. I do have some masks. As you can see back here, I've got some César masks, certainly, but I've never really sought them out. I've never tried to build a César collection. And there are César super collectors out there that just have hundreds of masks and very rare, expensive, historically important masks. And I'm sure that they could write a book about César. And I hope they do one day and translate it into English so we can all learn more about this mask company, which, by the way, is not technically in business. I think it still exists as a corporate entity, and I think it's doing something in the textile industry, but it's no longer in business as a mask maker. So that César, the mask company César, that is now a thing of the past, unfortunately. Maybe someone will resurrect it one of these days. I had a heck of a time trying to find information about César because it is a French company and not a lot of English-speaking collectors or YouTubers or people with websites have published authoritative information about César. Everyone seems to be kind of stumbling along, and they have some bits and pieces of information, but I can't find in English a definitive, authoritative history of the company. I couldn't find a Wikipedia page. Now, maybe there is one. Maybe it's in French. I don't know. But it didn't come up in my searches. So it could be there. Maybe you're Googling right now and you're looking at the screen saying, it's right here. What are you talking about? Well, good for you. I couldn't find it. So it was kind of difficult to get enough information about the company to present something credible to you. But I did manage to come up with some information. And a lot of this comes from a YouTube video on the Arkeo Toys, A-R-K-E-O Toys, the Arkeo Toys channel, hosted by Romain Cheval. It is a French language channel. Romain speaks French on this channel. There were also a couple of, as I mentioned, some old news clips from French television news stations, news organizations that went into the César factory and interviewed the CEO, interviewed the people who worked there, and showed footage of the mask making going on at the factory. And luckily, unlike a lot of other languages, YouTube is pretty good at auto-translating French. So I was able to read English subtitles on these French videos. So those are my main sources, these vintage news clips talking about the company, and Romain Cheval's Archeo Toys channel. Romain did a video, a pretty long, in-depth video about Cesar, where he went into a lot of detail about the history of the company. So thank you, Romain. I will put a link to that video in the description of this video, and I'll try to put some other links, if I can find them, to help you find more information about Cesar, but they're going to be in French, just letting you know. There are a couple of Facebook groups devoted to Cesar. I am not a member of those groups. I did not join them. Just for the purpose of this video, I might join them in the future. So let's talk about Cesar. First of all, let's show a Cesar mask. Well, here, let's try to start with this one. This is on a glass head. I think I've shown this on the channel before. That's a pretty famous mask. That is the Critic. It's based on Gene Shalit. Let's see here. Well, you can see the tag. And this particular one is copyrighted 1997. But this mask was in production for a long time. It was used in the movie Terror Train, and that's why it's popular with collectors. For Terror Train, they customized it. They trimmed the mustache, and they put glasses on it, and they changed the hair a little bit to make it curlier. And it was supposed to be a Groucho mask in Terror Train, and I don't know if this mask at some point was released as Groucho. I've read things to that effect, but I don't know if those are accurate. It's supposed to be a critic named Gene Shalit. I think he's still alive. I'm not sure. I didn't look that up before I started this. But he was really big in the 70s and 80s. He had a big bushy mustache like that. Because it was used in that movie, Terror Train, this is very popular with collectors. And I've also got a Topstone Old Man, which was also used in Terror Train, that's based on a Cesar mask. It's a knockoff of a Cesar mask. And everyone wants the Cesar serpent that was used in Terror Train. The master mold for that serpent was recently sold for several $1,000s. So we might see it reborn. I don't know. We'll see. But for some reason, that particular mask is extremely rare. Anyway, that's a classic Cesar, the Critic. And in case I haven't mentioned it, Cesar is known for making vinyl masks. This is a vinyl mask, not a latex. Like most of the masks I've shown you here, if they're not Ben Cooper style, then they're rubber, they're latex, like Topstone or Don Post. Those are rubber, latex rubber masks. Cesar makes vinyl masks. They used to make paper, as we'll find out. Paper mache, cardboard masks, and also some vacuform masks. But they're most famous for their soft vinyl masks, which is what these are. And which is why they tend to survive. Latex rots and crumbles, but vinyl tends to hold itself together over time. It doesn't disintegrate like latex does. Let's talk about Cesar. I've seen 1842 listed as the date when it was founded, and I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but I've seen that date, 1842, in more than one place, noted as the date of its founding. According to Romain's information, Cesar started as a quill pen company, making goose feather pens in the early 19th century, so the early 1800s. It was owned by the Bartholomew family, not Bartholomew, Bartholomew family, and they produced these feather quill pens. Then mechanical pens started to take over the market, and they killed the feather pen market. Just like AI taking over now and all the technological changes we've seen over the last 30 years, everyone's making money off those feather pens, and then here comes mechanical pens. And now what are they going to do? Now they're out of business. Everyone wants these newfangled mechanical pens. They don't want the feathers. So the Bartholomew family figured out a way to survive. They adapted. They said, well, you know, we could take this inventory of feathers and attach them to cardboard masks and make masquerade carnival masks and sell the masks, because the paper part themselves, that's cheap, and we have all these beautiful feathers, so let's just shift from a pen company to a mask company. And that's what they did. They used their huge inventory of feathers to make masks, and they were very successful at that. So successful, they started to attract potential buyers. And then in 1885, they were purchased by Julius Caesar. Then he sold it to Cleopatra, and Cleopatra ran the company into the ground. Well, it wasn't that Julius Caesar. It was a different Julius Caesar. And apparently, for the stuff I've seen online, like those news reports, they pronounce his name Julius Caesar, even though they pronounce the company Caesar. So I'm going to say Julius Caesar. He purchased this company, and the Bartholomew family might have changed hands a couple times before it got to Julius. I'm not sure about that. But in 1885, Julius bought it. And then he changed the company name to Caesar. Under Julius, the company specialized in festival and carnival and New Year's masks. Then in the 1930s, Julius's heir, Guy Caesar, took over the company. And he set up a facility in Sommières. It's a town in France. Caesar became very associated with that location over time. So that was Guy that set up that factory. And he gets licenses, including, most importantly, the Disney license. He obtains the Disney license to make licensed character masks. This is a huge thing for the company. In 1938, they start making Disney masks, and their business takes off. And they do other licensed masks as well, but the Disney one was the big one. And at this point, they're doing papier-mâché, pressed cardboard, pulp masks. They're not doing vinyl or plastic yet. Over the 30s and 40s, they start branching out and creating political masks, masks of current figures, politicians, celebrities. And they would continue to do that, as you saw with the critic over here, for the rest of the company's history. In the 1940s, they start making toys, papier-mâché toys. And I saw some images of these toys. They're really impressive. They're articulated, like 5-point articulation, necks and shoulders and hips. They're pretty advanced for that time, but they're papier-mâché. And they look like generic Disney characters, but one of the sources said they were licensed, but they didn't look licensed. But they're basically Disney fairy tale type characters, but they're very elaborate and they're articulated. Unfortunately, these toys were a failure, so that didn't last long. If the toys had been a success, maybe they would have become a toy company, but that didn't work out. In 1954, they start making vacuum-formed masks, like Ben Cooper style masks, where you take a sheet of plastic and you have a metal mold of the character's face, and you put the plastic down, you heat it up, and you put a press on it, and plastic melts into or softens up and forms over the metal mold, and then you cut the plastic, and then you have this plastic mask. So, like Ben Cooper masks. That would come in handy later when they start doing vinyl masks, because those two, the vinyl and the vacuum-formed plastic mask, there's a marriage between the two, which you'll see soon. they get into more licenses like Beatles and TV show characters, cartoon characters. They start attracting competitors. Other companies start making similar masks. Then in 1971, finally they have the birth of the flexible vinyl mask that they're famous for, at least in the collecting world. When you think Cesar as a mask collector, when you think Cesar, you think of those flexible vinyl masks. Those didn't come about until 1971. It seems late. I wonder if that's accurate, but that's the information I got. That's when they started with the flexible vinyl. It does seem kind of late, though. That was a huge success, more successful than ever. Their company takes off, and it's a worldwide success, and they keep expanding until 1990. The Cesar family sells the business to Richard Oisans Wison? I don't know. Richard Oisans. He was the CEO of a company called Massport. Apparently that was a big corporation, and he took the Cesar company international, made it, again, bigger than ever. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Around this time, there's a push to popularize Halloween in France. Halloween had never been big in France. It was seen very much as an American holiday. The French were not very interested in it. But there was a push mainly by manufacturers, people who would profit off Halloween, a push to get the French interested in the holiday. That attracted the attention of Rubies, a big Halloween manufacturing company, and they got involved with trying to push Halloween in France because they wanted a piece of that market. In the early 2000s, there was a rash of Scream-inspired knife attacks throughout France, not just in one place, but in different parts of France. Apparently people supposedly were wearing Scream-style masks, or at least maybe there was a scapegoat, maybe they blamed Scream, but that's what it became known as, that these attacks, people thought they were imitating Scream. And everyone was scared of these knife attacks, particularly because it seemed like they were happening all over, not just one place. And that started a panic, kind of like how in the United States in the 1980s, Halloween almost died because of the Tylenol scare, and the Halloween manufacturers had to get together to try to save Halloween. Well, these knife attacks did that to Halloween in France in the early 2000s. And then the Catholic Church got involved trying to tamp down Halloween. And it worked. Halloween fizzled out. So it never really caught hold. A variety of factors came together, and Halloween went downhill. The holiday went downhill in France. And that was a big loss for Cesar and their hopes of expansion. And then Cesar lost the Disney license, which had been their biggest moneymaker for 70 years. And in 2004, Cesar was forced to close 2 of their factories. And a few years later, they auctioned off thousands of their molds. They went down to 24 employees, and that's when they shifted from mask making to textiles. And in 2019, a major shareholder filed for bankruptcy. And I don't know exactly what's happening to Cesar today, but I mean, they're not, if they still exist as a corporate entity, then they're certainly not what they were, back in the day. Now, I'm sorry if that was a lot of rambling, but I thought it was important to get that out because there's no English language source for that history. You can Google and Google and Google and search around, and you just can't find a concise, authoritative summary of the company's history. You find little bits, I mean, like a date here or a name there, but there is no Wikipedia type of summary. This is the history of Cesar. Like I said, I couldn't find it. Maybe you can find it. You can tell me about it in the comments. You know, maybe I'm just stupid and it's easy to find. But I couldn't find any easily accessible history of Cesar English language online. So now I've just provided you with an English language history of the company. With that, let's look at a few masks. That's what we're here for. This is kind of strange. We'll start with this. This is a packaged mask. I don't think it has a tag on it, but it's got price stickers on this bag. Now, this mask is falling apart. The mustache has come loose, and the eyebrows have come off, and they're rolling around in there somewhere. And I don't know what he's supposed to be exactly. What company, what store is this? Marcino's, 1999. What about this one? Made in France. So this is the actual, this is not a price sticker. This is the Cesar company sticker. That's not a store sticker. So this is the Cesar company bag. It's not sealed though. Yeah, he's got two eyebrows and a mustache in there. So his eyebrows and mustache have come loose. I don't know who he's supposed to be. And now look at that. That is a vacuum-formed plastic insert. It's the same sculpt as the mask itself, as the vinyl mask. And that's how they shipped. They all shipped from the factory with these plastic inserts inside of them to help the mask keep its shape. And a lot of, well, I was going to say a lot of them still have it. I shouldn't say that. But Cesar collectors like to keep those plastic inserts if possible. They like to keep them intact, keep them with the mask. I thought at first this was the same mask. It's not, though. But here's a similar mask. I do not know who that's supposed to be. I thought maybe it was Burt Reynolds, but that double chin doesn't look like Burt Reynolds. For all I know, it could be a French politician. I don't know. I have no clue. Oh, does he have his insert? No, he doesn't. This one does not have an insert. I thought maybe he did. So he's holding a shape pretty good for a Cesar that doesn't have its insert. Usually when they don't have the insert, they start to lose their shape. I mean, they don't turn into a blob. I mean, they're not as neat as this one is. So if you can keep the insert, that's pretty good. I notice with my last couple of videos, I tend to, when I hold stuff off to the side here, I got to try to keep things more centered. That's better. I don't know who that is, but that's a good example of what I think most Cesar masks are more like this. They're political figures or celebrities or just known people instead of characters like monsters. Let's see, what should we... Well, let's get these since they're right here. Here are some gore masks from Cesar. And these look like Be Something Studios knockoffs, but maybe Be Something Studios is knocking off Cesar. I've noticed all these companies knock off each other. And like for instance, looking at some catalogs online, I saw several Cesar masks that were obviously knocked off by Topstone. In that case, Topstone knocked off the Cesar. But then I also see that Cesar knocks off Dom Post, it knocks off Fun World. So they're all knocking off each other. All these companies copy each other. Weirdly, to a degree that's kind of strange. You'd think, okay, there'd be some of that, but it's almost pathological in the mask business. It's weird how much they copy each other. That reminds me of the Hanging I Do. Is that what it's called in the Be Something Studios line? I mean, not that every mask with a hanging eye has to be a copy of that mask, but it seems to me like that might be the inspiration. And this mask, it does have its insert. I have a plastic bag in there to try to help hold its shape. And I have two examples of this mask. Very Be Something-esque. Looks a lot like a Be Something Studios mask. Only a little more softened as far as, you know, like more comical. Not as grisly. And I have another example of that mask. They're painted a little bit differently. And they both have their inserts. That's that sound, that clicking, that's the insert inside there. Same sculpt, same mask. Paint is a little bit different. It's not identical, so probably different years. Let's put these back in here. Let's look at some of these masks behind me. They were over there, and now they're over here. Start with this clown since he's kind of the odd man out. I don't know what to tell you about this clown. He's just a clown. He's not Bozo or anything like that. He does look like an evil clown because of those eyebrows. So I think he's an evil clown. I don't know what year any of these are. This is all that information, that big info dump at the beginning. It contrasts now with total vacuum of information as I'm showing you these masks, because I really don't have much to say about these individual masks other than, wow, they're cool, because I don't know their names. I don't know what year they're from. And not all Cesar masks had names. Looking at some catalog images, a lot of them just have numbers. I think some do have names, and I think some of the tags have a name on it. But I don't think all of them have names. Especially, I think, as you got later in the company's history. This is a really cool Quasimodo mask. Look at that. Look at the color. And this one does have its insert. I put these plastic bags in these things, so it's kind of hard to see the insert, but I think you can see some of it in there. See, up there, there's the insert, that white plastic right in there. And they tend to bend, like you see that one's bent over. It's really hard to take care of the inserts. They get brittle over time, and as you might see some of these later, some of these things are really in bad shape. Some of these inserts are in bad shape. What do we got here? Oh, I like this one. And I think I saw a catalog listing of him that called him just Bald Wolfman. I think that's what they called him. That's what he is. I mean, he's a bald Wolfman. He's the Wolfman. I mean, he's Larry Talbot, Universal Wolfman. He's not licensed, I don't think, but he's the Wolfman. And pretty good Wolfman, too. I mean, imagine if it had this hair all on top of his head, all curly, and maybe, you know, some right there. What a Wolfman mask that would be. Paint the tip of his nose here. That'd be a great Wolfman mask. But because he's not licensed, they made him bald. Like, no, he's not the Universal Wolfman. Look, he's bald. Universal Wolfman isn't bald. But he's a great Wolfman. I like that sculpt. I think there's a paint variant of him with clownish colors, and we'll look at that Frank in a little bit. I think, I'm not sure. Some of these have clownish, clown-colored paint variants. This is a Phantom of the Opera. And this is one I think Topstone knocked off, but I think they're both knocking off Don Post. So I guess it's all fair. I have a Topstone Phantom that's very similar to that. It's latex, though this is vinyl. And I'm sure they're both knocking off Don Post. Or maybe they're knocking off another Phantom. I'm not an expert on like Be Something Studios, if they made a Phantom like this, or I don't know, Travelers or whatever. Death Studios. I don't call myself an expert in much of anything except Topstone. I am an expert on Topstone. I will proudly say that. But not much else. Not on Cesar, that's for sure. Here's the insert in there. See how it's doubling down, it's folding over. Very hard to keep these inserts in good shape. Now let's look at this Frankie. After all that talking, now we're just going through these lickety-split, aren't we? Well, before we show you his face, can you see that little symbol on the bottom of his chin? That's the Cesar stamp. So if you're wondering if a mask was made by Cesar, look for that. Usually it's under the chin. It might be covered with hair or whatever, so it might be hard to find. But that'll tell you it's Cesar. Now here's the Frankie. This is a cool Frankenstein. Look at that guy. Isn't he neat? Somewhat of a Karloff Frankenstein. Not exactly. I mean, obviously it's Karloff inspired. That's a great Frankenstein. Look at the clamps on his forehead. That is neat. That is a really cool Frankie. Really cool Frankenstein. And the more I look at it, the more I like it. Now somebody, I think it was on the Ben Cooper video, corrected me, said it's Frankenstein's monster. Oh, jeez. I don't know if he was half joking or what, but really, it's 2024. Are we gonna do that? But this is a cool Frankenstein mask, and you can see how the insert is just cracking up. I mean, it's obliterated in there. And some are worse than this. It's so fragile, it becomes so brittle over time. I mean, the outer mask is great, but that insert, the plastic insert, is just coming apart, unfortunately. Let's look at a different Frankenstein. And this is our first one that has a strange marking on it, but I'll talk. Let's see the mask first, and then we'll talk about the marking. Here's a different Frankie. Now that is quite an unusual Frankenstein. It's bigger, it's more colorful. I mean, that is something. Look at that. Very flat head. Very unusual Frankenstein. Look at that. Almost like comic art. Like something from the 60s. Like a, I don't know, something you'd see in Mad Magazine. His chin has an interesting marking. It doesn't have that Cesar logo on it. It says Festival, or maybe it's Festival. Festival 81, copyright Festival 81. And the next couple we're going to look at have that. And I thought, was this a competitor of Cesar? And then I found out, no, these are Cesar masks. I don't know why they say Festival. Maybe that was a, maybe that was a separate line. Like, here's our Festival line of masks. I could read something about there being at some point in the 90s, a group of companies that were sort of under the Cesar banner. Maybe that's what's going on. But this isn't 90s, this is 81. This is, I assume, 1981. There are, because I've seen auction evidence that there are masks with a Cesar tag. It's obviously Cesar. It's got the Cesar tag attached. And they've got the Festival 81 logo under the chin. So they're Cesar. I don't know what the story is. Maybe a Cesar scholar out there can tell me why are some Cesar masks marked Festival 81 under the chin. Because apparently they are Cesar, because we've got tagged examples with the Cesar tag. So they're Cesar, but they say Festival 81 under the chin instead of the Cesar logo. That's strange. I guess not so strange once you find out why, but since I don't know why, it's kind of strange. Here's another Festival 81. And it's always 81. It's not some other date. Here's a Dracula. And he's cool because he's got a monocle. Yeah, there you go. There, you can see it reflecting. He's got a monocle. He almost looks like the Mego Mad Monster Dracula, the Dreadful Dracula. There is a Joker that looks very similar, and people often list him on eBay as a Dracula, but he's not. He's a Joker. He doesn't look like a traditional Joker, though. He looks very similar to this. But he is, apparently, from what I've read, he is supposed to be the Joker. This, though, this is Dracula, and you can tell because he has fangs. The other one that looks very similar does not have fangs. Very cool mask. And this is one of my favorites of the entire bunch. This is a werewolf. It's not the Wolf Man. That is quite a werewolf. Oh man, he's so big. Trying to hold him out so you can see all of his details. He wants to curl up. Look how colorful he is, and he's got hair on the back. Look at that, even inside the ear. I mean, imagine these with black light. What this would look like. Any of these festival ones. This is a Festival 81 mask. Imagine that with black light. That is something. That's great. I mean, the design, the paint, everything. And it's vinyl. It's not latex. It's vinyl. Oh, what just fell out of that? A little tag fell out of this. And I don't know how to pronounce that place name. I think it's Mauritius. Mauritius? Mauritius? M-A-U-R-I-T-I-U-S. But I know that's one of the locations associated with Cesar. So this little sticker just lends credibility to what I've already learned, that this is a Cesar mask. And this isn't the first little label that's fallen out tonight since I started looking at these things, preparing for the show. So I've got all these little labels that, they've lost their stickiness, so I don't know what to do. I hate to just throw them away, but they're not going to stay with, they're too small, they're not going to stay with the mask. They'll just get lost. Another thing about these festival masks, they have an insert. I don't know if you can see it, but it's in there, but they're clear, or if not perfectly clear, they're translucent. So they don't have that solid opaque color that the Cesar inserts have. See it in there. And the reason I have plastic bags in all these was just to puff out their chins tend to want to like compress. And the vinyl wraps around the edges of the insert over time. So I wanted to, without having to be too much of a contortionist while I'm showing them to you, I want them to sort of puff out a little and show their shape and their features. Here's that other Wolfman. I like them both. I like the more fanciful one. I like this more Cheney-esque one. Now again, Cesar made thousands of masks, so we're seeing just a tiny little sample of what they made. Let's take a look at these. Is this Festal or is this Cesar? It's Cesar. Here is a Cesar. What I think is Cesar's take on the Vern Langdon zombie. Seems to me to be what they're aiming for with this. Looks like they're inspired by the Vern Langdon zombie. I mean, it's quite a bit different than the zombie mask, but I think it's pretty clear that the inspiration is there. No, I don't store it on this styrofoam wig stand. It's only on this stand just for the purposes of this show, to help show it to you, so I can set it up on here like this. Let's get the critic out of the way for a minute. Now this is my favorite Cesar mask. And again, it's only on styrofoam temporarily. This is my favorite Cesar mask. At least out of the ones I've seen. That's a Glenn Strange Frankenstein. And it's actually a pretty good Glenn Strange sculpt. But look how it's painted. It's got that clown paint scheme. And they did a creature from the Black Lagoon like this too. The creature mask, he's kind of bald like that Wolfman. And he's got clownish green hair on either side of his head. And comical paint like this Frankenstein has. So I know they made the Frankie like this. Obviously, here it is. And they made a creature like this. And I'm pretty sure, you know, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that bald Wolfman at some point was made in a similar silly paint scheme. And there were probably others, but those are the ones I've seen. I know the creature for sure exists. I was just looking at a collector showing it off a couple days ago. And I did have an opportunity to buy one in 2019. Should have bought it. Should have bought it. It was very affordable, and I don't know, I just didn't do it. Otherwise, I would have it here to show you now. But anyway, here's this great Glenn Strange Frankenstein. I don't know if they ever issued this in ordinary colors, like flesh tone or green. I don't know. Or if it was only released like this. Again, a Cesar scholar can tell me, is there a more cinematic version of this mask in a tan, like his ear there, in a tan paint scheme or a green paint scheme? Or it could be kind of silvery, like I think one of those Frankies we looked at had kind of a silver skin tone. Another one of my favorite Cesar masks is Fantomas. I've heard the name pronounced Fantomas, but I think it's Fantomas. It's just, I mean, it's based on a movie character, which goes way back, but the particular version of this character that the mask is based on is from the 1960s. And it's just sort of like a silver blue, very neutral looking, almost featureless mask, which is what the character looks like in the movie. He wears like a disguise that's just sort of a blank mask, almost like Michael Myers, a decade early, but it's kind of a silvery blue. And he's a super villain, like Diabolik. And a friend of mine, I think, has that mask. It's not that hard to get. I mean, you can get it. It's just paying for it is the thing. And like I said, I'm not really a Cesar collector. I've never really gone after these. So I've never paid big money for any of these. They've just sort of come to me over time. I've had 2 of these. This is the second one of these I've had. I think I traded the other one for a Topstone item. I think. Anyway, I'm glad I still have this one. He's pretty cool. So that is my favorite Cesar mask. The Glenn Strange Clown Frankenstein. And I just found out recently that Don Post made a Glenn Strange Frankenstein with clown makeup in their final years. I don't know if it was, 2011 or, I don't think it was 2012. I think it was in their last, few years before the company closed down. And I had never seen one until recently. And I'm sure they must have been inspired by this mask. Because this has been known in collector circles for a long time. This is not something that just surfaced. This has been, collectors have talked about this mask and been seeking this mask for a long time. So it's pretty established as a collector's item. And that's probably what Don Post was going for when they made that clown Glenn Strange over a decade ago. That's the last mask I wanted to show you. We're done with the masks. I have no more masks to show you. What else can I say about Cesar? It's a really interesting company, very European, very French. You can tell it's not an American company, just the taste and how it's sculpted and how it's presented and how it's painted. It's very unique. One of their staples was old age masks, like old man, old lady, and you would see those everywhere. If you ever bought or got your hands on like a novelty catalog, like Johnson Smith, those kinds of, they used to be really big. I knew when I was a kid, I loved getting those catalogs. And they had all the weird joke stuff and novelty stuff. You would always see those old man, old woman masks, along with other kinds of novelty masks. And a lot of those were made by Cesar. But particularly the old man, old lady, there's a very, very iconic pair of old man, old lady masks that are made by Cesar. You saw those everywhere in the 70s. They were all over the place. They must have been among their best sellers because they were very, very common, and it seemed like everybody had one. Just like everyone had a Tor Johnson mask from Don Post, everyone had the old man, old lady mask from Cesar. That concludes this episode. We have one more October episode left, and I think that will upload on November 2nd. If I can finish it sooner, maybe I'll upload it on Halloween Day. That's a Thursday, and we usually upload on Saturday. But so it might be Halloween morning, but if not, it'll be November 2nd. I say it's Halloween weekend. Let's just say the weekend after Halloween, it's Halloween weekend. So we got Thursday's Halloween, Friday's Halloween, Saturday's Halloween, Sunday's Halloween. It's Halloween weekend. So let's just declare that as a national Halloween holiday all weekend. It's Halloween weekend. We'll have one more episode, and I think we'll cover the NECA Ben Cooper figures in that episode. And then we might take a little break, as we often do, after the Halloween season, and then come back with more episodes of Basement of Horror. But for now, I may not see you before Halloween, so have a happy Halloween, happy and safe Halloween. If you've got any Silver Shamrock masks, don't watch that big giveaway commercial. Don't watch it. Just turn it off. Don't watch it. So have a safe, happy Halloween, and remember, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.